transported to Fort Devens, Massachusetts. Stayed there about 4 days and through the indoctrination, and we left camp and for training, basic training down in Fort McClellan, Alabama. After 17 weeks training there, well, it wasn't 17, they cut it to 15 because I guess things were getting pretty sticky overseas. We were given 10 days at home and ordered to Fort Ord, California. There we expected more training, and we boarded a train one day and they took us north. We thought we were going to Fort Lewis, Washington. And before we know it, the train was going through city streets in Oakland, and it ended right on a pier. We looked out the window and there's this big gray steel wall, which happened to be the troop ship. So there went the training. It was that was a very, well, how can I put it? It was a pretty unnerving experience, especially for most of us who were 18, 19 years old. In fact, I think I was 18 and 3 months. The ship was APA, General Butner, I think, and that carried 6,600 troops, 3 USO shows, and 2 general hospitals. And we crossed the Pacific alone, which was also unnerving. We had no escorts. That trip took 31 days. And that cured me for, I promised myself I'd never go on another cruise, and I never have since then. I ended up in on the island of Leyte, which they were just cleaning up, and to give us experience, they threw us in the field and picking out to round up stray Japanese. After a month of that, I boarded another ship. Is this where you want to go?
Sure.
And I got in just after the landing in Luzon. And there I joined I was assigned to the 6th Division, Company C, 20th Infantry. This is a funny incident. Well, it wasn't too funny. It goes to show you how they can train you for months and months. But when it's time to use that training, well, I'll explain what happened. We had to go by, there were 9 of us on a truck, and we were going to our company area, which was at the front lines. And where the truck is going through half jungle, half plains, and all of a sudden we hear shells coming in. Well, we didn't know if they were coming in or they were going out, so we asked the sergeant who was taking us. He says, they're coming in. He says, everybody off. So we all jumped off, the shell started landing, and we all jumped off the truck, and 9 of us, we followed, so I don't know who led us, we all went under the truck. And the sergeant is yelling, he says, what are you, crazy? He says, they're aiming for the truck. So he said, get on the side of the road. So it goes to show, they can train you for months and still, when that first thing happens, it all's forgotten. Then I joined they finally got us to a battalion where they took us to a tent and picked out our actually trained in all infantry weapons. I can hear in the distance. Now this is 9 fellas that were all about the same age, and never been anywhere near anything like this before. But in the distance, you can hear the shells popping and machine gun fire. We didn't know where it was coming from. It was pretty scary. And they took us to our company. And I don't know, this is going to be kind of messy here. They took us to the company's C emplacement, and we were just hanging around, and all of a sudden a litter squad came by, and there were 4 litters with bodies on it, covered with their ponchos, and we were looking at it. It was not too nice a thing to see, and the sergeant said to me, Sergeant Rhodes his name was, he said, well, you're not going to get to meet your second lieutenant, because that's him over there. So that was our first day with the company. After that, I think we lost 3 second lieutenants. Well, we ended up, we were assigned foxholes. I met they put us in with a regular, one of the older fellas, and he turned out to be one of my best friends. His name was Rudy Vismore from Atlanta, Georgia. And what could you say? You roomed with him in a hole. And that was the worst night I think I ever spent in my life, the first night. And the funny part of it was, after when him and I pulled guard duty, we had like an hour on and 4 hours off. And these noises were really making me pretty jumpy. It's really black, and I hear all this rustling going on in the trees. And I said that I whispered to Rudy. I said, Rudy, is someone sneaking up? He says, no, packs of monkeys. They do this all the time. They travel at night. He said they go through the trees. And I said, there's something else to contend with, you know.
In the jungle.
The what?
You're in the jungle.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of jungle. You don't want any of the action part, do you? That's,
whatever you feel like sharing.
well, we had a couple of banzai attacks 2 nights later, and that was no fun. A lot of hollering and shooting.
Tell them about the picture, Dad.
That comes way afterwards.
Take a break.
Huh? Yeah, take a break. Can you take a break now?
Sure.
Just a little.
Yeah. Yeah.
I expect all this.
Dad, well, that's why I said, why don't you tell a funnier story? You know,
Well, yeah, well, this is just.
Okay, we just took a short break and now we're going to start right back up.
What was I? Well, after about 2 weeks, our regiment was depleted, so they pulled us off the line, and they made us MPs in Manila, which had just been liberated, and was quite a mess. So from the line we went as MPs. It was 8 hours off, 12 hours on, 12 hours off. That was we were there about 6 weeks, and a lot of the guys started drifting back who were in hospitals. most of them were on the line 112 straight days, which was, they said it was a record for the Pacific, which that's not such a nice record. Yes.
Okay. Do you want to talk about your medals for a little while?
Well, one thing Manila had, the duty of Manila, had me, at least I caught up with correspondence from home.
Oh.
And my parents and my sister had this little thing that they did. They'd send me a letter, and in the letter would be a self-addressed envelope, airmail, and a piece of paper, so that as soon as I got the letter, I had no excuse. If you're interested, these are the letters. This is what they look like in those days. Now these were returned after I was wounded. They returned home. Mm-hmm. You know, if you got time, you have to read one of these. So I try to. So every time I got a letter, right away I posted and sent it right back. It worked out pretty good. When we were in Manila, the food improved immensely. We had 3 squares a day, and no more C rations and K rations. But and I started putting on weight. I know I weighed more than I ever weighed. It was I had to get a whole new issue of clothes because my waist went up from like 32 to 35 or something like that. I don't know, where do you want to go from here?
Tell us about this medal.
Well, the medal, I earned the combat infantry badge. Most people know what that is. It's something as infantrymen are always pretty proud of. Because actually during the war there was so few that, you know, a lot of people thought that, I'm going to really digress here.
Okay.
We had 16 million men in the United States Army. Now the government, the Army states that it takes 10 men to keep 1 man in the front. Okay. So we figured out one day that there were 1,750,000 men in the infantry. 1,750,000. How did we win the war? You know, with that few. Well, there must be a reason. Anyway, the combat infantry band was awarded to actually infantrymen who were on the line. Purple Heart, that's for wounds, and everybody knows those things.
Do you mind telling us why you received the Purple Heart? The story.
Well, I got the Purple Heart from wounds I received in northern Luzon on my mother's birthday, incidentally, August 5th, 1945, which was 15 days before they stopped the fighting.
4 days before 9/11.
Yeah, it was, things were still pretty hot up there, up in northern Luzon, and mortar shells were really flopping around, and that's, I caught some mortar shells, fragments on my side of my face, knocked out a couple teeth, which really burned me because I had all my teeth at that time, and here and I'm spitting out 2 teeth. And we had to stay, it was rained all night, I remember that, and the holes were half full of water, and we had to stay in there from midnight till 7 o'clock the next morning. where 8 of us were evacuated. First stop was the battalion aid station, and which was a 2-mile walk back. Then we had 3 litter cases. Then from then on, there was a series of hospitals. 5 months, 5.5 months worth of hospitals. I think I stayed in. I was taken care of. The last operation I had was in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. Now, there's a place down there called the Greenbrier Hotel, which is a millionaire's resort. It's on television all the time. And the Army took it over during the war and made a vascular hospital out of it. So I was there for 5 months, and man, boy, that was unbelievable. We lived like millionaires down there. We had a stable of horses, 2.5 golf courses. Sneed was the golf pro down there. Sammy Sneed, he was the golf pro. That was a pretty good way to end the Army career. We ate on tables with linen, silverware,
Really nice.
Class A. What do we?
This is like a personal question. Like, where were there? Did you constantly have supplies, or did supplies ever run low?
A lot of, for some reason, our division we were in the mountains most of the time, and we were supplied by air. I remember planes used to drop on parachute, but then they gave up the parachutes because they used to drift to the Japanese line. So they said just kick the supplies out of the boxes of 10-in-1s they were called. It's 3 meals for 10 men for 1 day in this box. And then they used to try to come low, but the mountains prevented it too. So they used to just kick them out, and the boxes used to fly all over. And I never smoked, but the poor guys who smoked, the cigarettes would always be crushed. See? But that didn't happen too. I'd say that happened maybe 5 or 6 weeks. We supplied by air, and we only were able to get water from the natives. They would hire natives to carry water up to us. The women, incidentally, were the ones that did it. The men, I don't know where they were. The women did all the work over there. But they always try to get us a hot meal. And it's amazing how our kitchen guys always manage to get 1 hot meal up to us. Except when we went on a long patrol where we'd always know where we were going because we'd get supplied with these, they call them D-bars. These are big chocolate bars. When we were issued those, we knew we were going to be tough. Because that was our meal for the day. They were made in Australia. And they said they were chocolate, but I don't know. There must be a lot of soybeans in there or something. But when that happened, we knew it was going to be a big problem. But, you know, one thing, I was fortunate to be in a regular Army outfit. Most of these guys were in the Army 8, 10 years before the war started, which made it kind of difficult because a lot of them, our first sergeant was 54 years old. Yeah. And most of the guys were in their late 30s. and I hear a bunch of 18, 19-year-olds come flying in, you know. But it was they were a great bunch. Most of them for the Midwest. Most of them were farmers. The best guys. Never left anybody behind. We always never had any. Our company anyway never had anybody missing. If somebody was missing from a patrol, volunteers got together and we went back and picked them up. And most of the time we found them wounded. Now if we didn't go back, who knows? You know, you might have not have made it. But we never lost anybody. Not in the time I was there anyway.
Wow.
Never lost. When I say lost, I mean we didn't miss anybody. But I always felt sorry for the older guys. They had it tough, especially the 38-year-old, you know, running around and fishing. It was very difficult for them. When the point system, I don't know if anybody remembers the point system, when that came out near the end of the war, you got so many points for different things, and if you reached a certain amount of points, you were discharged, you were sent back. So we had a lot of guys who had enough points, but they were still there. So what they did, we all decided to, if something we had to go on some kind of a dangerous mission, we'd leave those guys behind. I mean, it'd be a shame. Here's a guy who shouldn't be here because he has enough points to get out, and he's still here.
That's really
So
honorable.
we used to try to keep him back as much as possible.
Wow.
This is the kind of guys we had in this company. And I think all infantry companies are made up of the same type of, it's camaraderie they call it, or whatever it is, but you really get close to them. I went to one reunion. The company had a reunion 6, 7 years ago?
Missouri.
In Missouri, yeah. And I read about it in American Legion magazine, and I made a phone call, and this is fun. And there was a number to call, so I called the number, and they gave me another number to call. So I called it, and it was in Indianapolis. And this guy answered the phone. I said, who am I speaking to? And he said, Lenny Ziegler. I said, Ziegler? I said, I'm looking for somebody for this Company C reunion. He said, well, that's me. Maybe you know me better as Doc. And sure enough, he was our platoon medic.
Wow.
He was the last man I saw when I was wounded, because he crawled to my hole and he bandaged me up. And I hadn't seen him until I talked to him 55 years
Wow.
later. So we couldn't wait for the reunion, which was a very emotional thing.
So,
When I talking about the day I was taken to the hospital, my platoon sergeant, name was Call. He came over to me and he said, how much money do you have? I said, I don't know, a couple of pesos. Peso was $50. He said, well, here's $20, he said. 20 pesos, which is $10. He said, when you get back, you know, I expected to only be gone 6 weeks. I said, when you get back, we'll take care of it. I said, oh, so I thanked him and I left. And a few days later, the war ended. I never saw him again. In fact, one other fella, Larry, he was one of my best friends. I can't remember his last name. Kirshner. He was an opera singer. Here he is in the infantry. I don't know. We'd be marching, going along to a jungle, and he's singing German opera. Crazy. It's, well, anyway, he gave me a few pesos too. But he was from Philadelphia, and I saw him after the war. We got in touch, but I didn't know how to get in touch with this Call, my platoon sergeant. until I talked to the medic about the reunion. And I said, by the way, is Carl still around? He says, oh yeah, he's still around. I said, can you give me his name and address? He said, yeah, why do you want? He says, well, I owe him something. So he gave it to me, and I sent the letter off, and I had a check. I owed him $10. That bothered me for 50 years. I tried all different ways to get in touch with this guy, but I couldn't do it. So I went to the bank and I said, and then they were giving like 1%. So he figured, I said, how much, 50 years, $10. He said, about $65, something like that. So I sent a check to him, and I get a call about 2 weeks later, and it's he's all excited. He says, I'm going to send you something. I said, no, I don't need anything. He said, no, I'm gonna. So he sent me a copy of the newspaper. He was so taken up that I had sent him the money. He called a friend of his was a reporter for the
Sioux City.
Sioux City, yeah, Sioux City newspaper. And they did he sent me the front page, mind you, had a picture there, and he had a picture of the check and a big article on what had happened overseas. And so he said, he was laughing. He says, I finally got my day in the sun, you know. I said, gee, I never dreamed they would make that much of a deal out of it, but over there it was big news, you know. So I got a copy of it in here.
That's really great.
Huh?
That's a really great story.
There it is.
Wow.
World War II soldiers.
Shelters.
That's something.
Wow, that's
I
really
looked
cool.
at all the registry, wouldn't it?
Malaria. Well, we all got malaria with it. Everybody got it.
But how long you had it after?
Oh yeah, 4 years it would pop up.
Oh, wow.
Well, you stopped taking the pills,
Yeah.
see, so, which made you brownish yellow. And when you stop taking the pills, it breaks out in the wintertime mostly. And for about 4 years I had it. But it might still be there, I don't know. You don't know.
Deep down inside somewhere. What about, did you ever have any like good luck things or things you kept with you at all times? Any kind of those tokens or?
Like a pistol? No, that was. No, I didn't got that. Well, we all had the 45 pistol. No, that wasn't good luck. I just had to have it. For some reason, I was issued I took an M1. I had an M1 rifle as my weapon of choice, but they made me what they call a BAR man, automatic rifleman, because I shot expert at it in basic training of all places. So and with that, you're supposed to have a sidearm. They tried always to get it. I don't know how we got it from some cook or something. I can't remember that. But that was just something you had to have. Where are we up to?
Disney artist.
Oh, this is,
Hold it up.
we had entertainment, I guess. Up in the jungles too. There's this guy come in one day, and he turned out he was an artist, cartoonist from the Disney studios, and he did cartoons of everybody. We sat down and we had during the break. I don't know, and he'd ask questions of the other fellas about you, as when you said you're posing, and then he'd come up with a cartoon, and this is the one, and he said, the guy said, I was always saying this, you know. But that's what that is. That's me. Yeah, he's got his name down here too. In fact, after the war, when we'd have these Disney cartoons that come out, the long
Yeah.
one, I saw his name on it once.
Oh, that's
on,
really interesting.
Yeah. I always look for his name, and where it says animators. And sure enough, I saw him once.
That's really cool. Let's see. Yeah, you're talking about the entertainment. Were there any other things? Like, would you do personally, like, entertain yourself? You said one guy would sing the opera.
Well, I would play pinochle.
Oh.
And, I was playing pinochle since I was 6 years old, you know. And these guys thought they knew how to play pinochle. They didn't know too much about it. But that was the game. The officers always played cribbage. You know, the pegs. But we played pinochle. That's about it. We never had that much time for anything else. I was thinking of something I forgot. It happens a lot lately.
Did you ever pull any pranks or things like that on each other, or it was more, yeah?
No. During basic training, they used to. They would take the. They had these grenades that were used in basic. They weren't real, you know, but they did have a charge in them. And they looked. Some of them looked. They looked real, and then some guys would always keep one and then throw it into the cabin, you know. But that's not nice.
No. What about, like, did you ever keep, like, a diary while you were?
I started it to keep a journal, but it was too. I just didn't. Maybe I started a lot of things and you just don't do it. But I did. I wish I did. Actually, though. My father saved every letter I ever sent, and I got piles of his too. Mine disappeared. I don't know, one day he moved his boxes of my letters to him. Those would have been a good journal, because the parts that weren't cut out, you know, they used to censor all our mail. Going out, but not coming into us. But they would, he got one letter once, he showed me when I got home. And then my signature at the bottom. And it was crazy.
Wow.
I have to remember what it was all about. I was telling them how we were being supplied by air, by these drops, you know.
Yeah.
That's all. I said, and I mentioned maybe Frank, who he knew was in that air service.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he's dropping them, you know. And this whole thing was cut out, which I thought was kind of ridiculous. What that kind of information am I giving them away with that? But they were pretty, but they let a lot of stuff through.
Yeah.
But
did you know they were censoring them when you sent
oh
them
yeah,
out, or was that
it had to be
after?
stamped. They had to stamp them.
Oh,
Your officers read them and censored them.
wow.
I don't know where they found the time to tell you. the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, at
Middle of the
certain
work.
times. Yeah.
You got food from home.
Oh yeah, we get packages, but it took so long. My mother she sent me a cake once, so that came was all shot. In a cardboard box. Then my father got smart and they put them in gallon oil cans. You know the oil can.
Yeah.
He used to cut the top and they used to put stuff in there so it won't crush.
Mm-hmm.
So that worked out pretty good for a while. But they sent me a lot of packages. All my relatives good. And I always got a lot of mail.
Yeah.
I used to write a lot, because as I said, my mother, they would all send me the letters with the self-addressed envelope in it and a piece of paper. So I had to do it.
Yeah.
I had no excuse not to.
How was you, like, did you, I mean, I can imagine how I felt, I can't even imagine how I felt emotionally, but did you feel stressed, or did, like, writing letters, do you think maybe helps that, or just the general?
Oh, you're always looking to get them
Yeah.
from home. You look forward to letters. And you know that your family are waiting, you know. I should have bought a few over here. I brought two. But my family's pretty good about writing.
That's
What
good.
else we need?
Let's see, do you wanna talk about after the war a little bit, what you did?
Let's see, after the war. As I mentioned before, I started I got in 2 summer sessions at UCONN,
Yep.
University of Connecticut, in 2 6-week sessions. So I earned about 30 credits. No, wait a minute. Yeah, about 20 credits, something like that. Anyway, when I was after I was I got a disability discharge because the time I was wounded, it was pretty bad, and I was rated 100% disabled for quite a few years. Anyway, my father, I was discharged January, 26th or 5th. Well, I started UCONN because of my father, February 1st
Oh my gosh.
for the spring semester. I was going to take the time off, you know.
Yeah.
Because, but my father, he wasn't a forceful type, but he
was afraid.
He had his way of doing it. He was afraid I wouldn't go back,
Yeah.
see, but I was going back. So I was only off. So we had to run out quick and buy clothes, and I went to Eisenberg's, all the good places. Eisenberg's in New Haven. I don't think they're there anymore. I started the February 1st semester. But then, when that semester was over, and I come back in September, I was a sophomore,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
So it worked out all right. And later on, because it helped me make, I got my degree in 3 years, actually. Well, 3 and a half. But it turned out he knew what he was doing. Father's always right. And I went to UCONN and got a degree in zoology, biology. And I had a lot of time coming because I went under the GI Bill.
Yeah.
But I had a special, I went under what they call Public Law 16, which was for disabled veterans. And they give you you show them you have to prove that you could reach a certain goal. Like say you have a goal for MBA, and it takes so many months. I think it's more than 4 years. And so anyway, I got all my time. I went to podiatry school, and the government, we had a very good program.
Wow.
They paid, especially PL 16 was for disabled. They paid everything,
All the way
and
through
we
grad
got
school.
we even got $75 a month subsistence too,
Wow.
and it was excellent. It was very good. Helped out my family anyway. So,
Yeah, definitely. Did you go to school straight through, or did you
Yeah.
stop for a couple of years
no,
before you went?
straight through.
Wow.
Well, then I got married in 1949, so the last 3 years of podiatry school I was married. I commuted every day from New Haven to 125th Street in New York, and got off there, and the school was right there.
What school did you
Still
go to?
lives.
It was part of Long Island University College of Podiatry. It's the New York College of Podiatry now. but I commuted me and two other fellows, we commuted every day for 3 years.
Wow, that's crazy. Did any of the friendships you made, you talked about how you met the guys like later, did you keep any close friendships that you talked to readily?
Some of them, but now, I did for a while.
Yeah.
They had a newspaper, my company they were pretty active. And they had a newsletter twice a year, and I wrote into them, I talked, I went to that reunion.
Mm-hmm.
But now, no more. They're all gone.
Yeah.
I was the youngest one in the company.
Wow.
Oh, me and another fella. He was from Kansas. That's a sad thing. The last time I was wounded, it was August 5th. Now, the war stopped the 15th, or the 15th, I think. And this fellow from Kansas, we were his two youngest ones in the company. Well, he was killed the day before I was wounded, just before the war ended. Yeah.
That's awful.
We were both automatic riflemen. So he's a very good friend of mine. Must be hard on his parents to get that letter,
You probably got it urgent.
Yeah. Anyway, what else?
What about like now with war? Do you have just negative thing? Like, I'm not even talking about like Iraq.
Every time I read this is the kind of letter, that's what you get from the government. The War Department regrets it for. See where it says slightly wounded?
Yeah.
They put that on all of them.
Oh my gosh. I know, you said
Slightly,
that you
I
were
was in
you
almost
were
6 months.
seriously
He
wounded.
had an aneurysm.
Just
Well, they false aneurysm. They ligated all my arteries on this side, 5 of them. And those days they didn't know how to bring them together,
Yeah.
so they tied them all off, and that's it. I was this hospital down in West Virginia was a vascular center,
Yeah.
and out of the 2,500 guys that went through there, we were the only, me and one other fellow were the only two that had it from the neck up. All the rest were in arms and legs.
Yeah.
So they just ligated it. In fact, I saw the movies of the operation too. They showed them
Of
to
your
me.
of your operation?
Yeah. He showed them to me. My doctor down there. When he heard I was in a pre-med course, he said, "We'd like to see the operation, the movies of your in living color too."
Wow.
So I saw the movies. It took 3.5 hours. It's almost 3 hours, but he cut out a lot of it. He said, "That's it." After that operation, I woke up and the room was full of people, and they're slapping me, and they couldn't get me out of it.
Yeah.
I didn't know all this.
No.
So when I went in for the operation, the clock was on the wall. I see it was 10 minutes to 7. So when I finally woke up, I happened to see the same clock, a different. Well, it was in the recovery room. I said, "Gee, it's only 10 after 8." He said, the nurse said, "Yeah, 24 hours later."
Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
They were they were using a new anesthetic on me in those days called Panadol. You've heard of that, haven't you? That was new then.
Yeah.
And they had penicillin was out, just out. That's what so we used to get a shot every 3 hours for 5 days before the operation and 5 days after it. And penicillin in those days was kept in beeswax to keep it stable.
Yeah.
The needle was like an 18 gauge needle, which is, and I'm telling you, I had them all over here, everywhere. They wake you up at night with the flashlight and they, oh, gee, here they come.
Wow.
That was was the worst part of it, I think.
Yeah.
The whole war.
That's funny. Let's just see. Well, at this point, is there anything else you want to add? Any story or anything you didn't cover that you think?
No. Can't think when I see your thing.
No, you did a great
Jog
job.
the memory.
No.
Incidentally, a lot of these, my father did all this.
Yeah.
You know, every time I saw an article with my division in it, he'd cut it out. So he knew exactly. He used to send me letters telling me where I'm going to be the next day. He said, you should be in Kiangan about now. And sure enough, that day, I showed it to my friends. I said, look at this. And we're just ready to go into it. He said, you should, because he followed it so close.
Did you have a map?
Huh?
Did you have a map?
Oh yeah, I have a map. I don't know where he got it. It was on silk of the whole island. Did I show you that map? It's home. Yeah. It says secret. I don't know who gave it to him. He got it somewhere.
That's really interesting.
The hospital down in West Virginia, that was something.
Yeah.
We had 3 golf courses, a stable of horses.
You deserved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's-
These are all my father's doing. This is what they call V-mail. See, we used to write letters, and the government used to photograph them because they can take a less. And that's not my parents. I think my parents used to get them, or me too. I used to get once in a while. That's how I used to come.
Interesting.
They used to call it V-mail. See, that way they can send thousands on one plane.
That's email.
But you never get the.
That's kind of cool.
Oh, that's when I was. It was in the local paper. Yeah, there's all kind of articles. I don't know how you found them all.
The money's interesting, huh? It's
Yeah.
just like ours.
Well, I was in New Guinea for a while, and that's where I got the guilders, I think. I got some Russian money in there too somewhere. I don't know where I picked that one up. This was the dollar bill is from Hawaii, and it had it says Hawaii in the back of it. You can't see it.
Oh. Huh.
That's the Russian one. I don't know where that came from. This is the New Guinea, I think. Dutch.
What did you do in New Guinea?
That's it. Huh?
I didn't know you were in New Guinea.
Just for a few days.
For what?
Just a layover, that's all. We got stressed our legs and went back. This was the Japanese invasion money that the Filipinos, they printed it up like
Like nothing.
crazy.
Okay.
This is real Japanese money.
Did you agree with atomic bombs being dropped?
Huh?
I guess.
Definitely. Atomic bomb?
Yeah.
Naturally, of course. I'm gonna tell you something. Toward the end of the war, I'd say in July, we started getting, with our last meal, they'd give us this little brochure. The company commander handed out, and we had to read this stuff. And on it, in it said how to act when we invade Japan. Different rules of conduct.
This company was gonna go in.
My company, the plan came out in November of '45, and my outfit was gonna land 20 miles north on the plain of Tokyo. That was our landing. There were gonna be 16 divisions. Anyway, on this, it told us that when we hit the beaches to treat every Japanese person over the age of 7 as an enemy soldier, male or female.
Oh my God.
Potential.
Unbelievable.
The reason is they said they're going to have children with grenades in their hands, first wave running toward us, figuring that the Americans won't shoot kids, which maybe is true. So they, every day, they kept pounding us into us. Forget it. Forget, they want you to forget something you were brought up on.
Yeah.
They want you to forget it. And that invasion would have been a massacre because the Japanese that I met, they didn't give up. Which was good because they got their just desserts. And not like in Europe. When in the hospitals, I talked to guys in Europe and who were there, and they said, yeah, these snipers and these, they picked off 5 or 6 guys and then they come in with their hands up, or they get that big thing in the blasted tank and then, but I don't know if you watch the History Channel, they didn't get away with it, they shot them. In other words, a lot of, it's hard to imagine how many of us Americans would have been killed in any landing in Japan.
You're Japanese.
And just not to get cut. I mean, I didn't feel sorry for the Japanese too, because thousands and thousands would have died from it. This saved. How people can say we should never drop the, as they weren't there, that's why. I was there. I saw how these people were. Their outlook on life was do all for the emperor,
Mm-hmm.
Not like here, we wouldn't say that about the president. Heck about the president. But don't get me wrong. Every soldier, every man I remember in the army, we all did our duty and all that. But as far as the bomb, anyone who says it should never have been dropped, I know they weren't there or they didn't even know anybody that was there.
Saved more lives.
I can't say that, I've always told you kids that.
Yeah, it saved more lives.
I say, sure, of course it did.
That's really
Sure, it
interesting.
saved more lives. Both sides. I mean, I can't imagine we were sweating that out. We were sweating out the landing in Japan, and the end of July we heard it was going to be that year, and it was that. It was going to be in November. November 1st was, they were going to land in the southern island. Okay, that's why they went into Okinawa, to get the base. And 16 divisions, there was a magazine called Outfit Magazine. They had the whole battle plan was in it, in the November or December issue. And the landing was going to take place on or about December 1st, something like that, or November 1st. 16 divisions were going to do it, be in on it. That's 10 more than went in on D-Day. First wave.
Yeah.
Because the islands are stretched out in Japan. And it was the old 6th Division, there we were, right on the plain of Tokyo. That was our spot. The bomb, Truman making that decision was, I think, the best decision any president ever made, and the spot he was in.
Yeah, it was a tough spot.
Well, he was an army man, see. He was a World War I artillery man, so I guess he remembered.
He understood.
No, it would have been. they still kick that red herring around in school about we shouldn't have dropped the bomb?
I think it's kind of presented both ways. Like you read some things that are for it and some things that are against it, but a lot of it is kind of just informative in a holistic way. So, like I read a whole book about like the makings of the bomb, and then I read people's perspectives about that it wasn't supposed to be dropped, and then some people were completely for it. So, it's still, because I think it's one of those things that you can never, unless you were there, I don't.
No, it was the whole month of July, they were giving us all kinds of little brochures and things on how to act when we hit the beaches in Japan. We were sweating that out. The guys, my infantry guys, are sweating that out. Really sweating that out.
Just awful.
Because that would have been terrible.
Unimaginable.
In fact, when I got hit August 5th, the last thing I said to my friend Rudy Bismarck, I said, well, I expected to be back with the company in 6 weeks, because that's what happened. I don't know how bad it was.
Yeah.
But I said, well, I'm going to miss the big show, I guess. Yeah, the landing. He said, called it $1 million wound. Now here's a guy, I kept in tags with him because he was a very good friend. He was with the company right through all the, he was a little older than I was. And he couldn't wait to get home. That's what he always used to tell me. Columbia, Georgia, Augusta, Columbia, Georgia, I think it was. He said, and then when the war ended, and I got in touch with this Kirshner, the three of us were very good friends. Larry called and said to me, what do you think about Bismarck? I said, what happened? He said, he re-enlisted. I said, he what? He says, he re-enlisted. He's going to officers training school. He became an officer in the Rangers. You know what the Ranger Battalion is?
No.
You see him on television all the time. They're the elite troops. Don't go in first and all that.
Oh, wow.
And he was killed in Korea. Jumping out of a plane. He was killed in Korea.
It's crazy.
See, when I went back to college after the war, I inquired about the ROTC, but I couldn't do it. They wouldn't let me because I was 100% disabled. See. I would have had to waive my disability. I said, oh no, I have to do that.
No.
I needed the money, you know.
Yeah.
So that group of guys that when I went back, the group of guys I knew, my fraternity and all that, they all ended up in Korea. They were all in the ROTC. They all ended up in Korea.
Wow.
Yeah,
I never heard anything.
yeah, they all ended up in Korea. Well, there were second lieutenants from the reserve, from the ROTC.
History
And,
books don't tell me that.
yeah. So if I was allowed to enlist, I would have ended up there too. Well, whatever. 18 years old, I think, is kind of young, though. You know, I think of my son when he was 18. I looked, I was his age, I was in the army,
Yeah.
I couldn't see him. Here's another thing. My son is the best kid. So I used to tell him about the difference. I said, we were different than you guys. You know, I said, when I was in high school, the war was on, we couldn't wait to get out of the high school to get in the army, to get in the service. We were afraid the war would be over before we got in. That's how I told that to my son. You know what he said to me? He said, "Whoa, you all nuts?" Well, see, it was a little different, I guess, then, you know. But this thing now in Iraq, every time I read it, we lost 85 guys last month. I just read it. Now, these reservists, most of them are reservists now. These are all family men. And I really feel for them. I mean, it's a shame because I get the feeling that these people don't want us there. Somebody doesn't. So why be there? What do you think about it?
I'm torn.
Torn?
Torn. I don't know. I don't think I'm against it.
These middle, I don't know, I think they just don't get, they've been fighting each other, their tribes, for thousands of years, and they're not gonna stop now.
It's a different kind of move.
It's a different,
They're not us.
to them, I don't know, it's almost like the old Japanese doctrine, you know, the ancestor worship and emperor worship. It's like that. Now everybody goes, these bombers,
Mm-hmm.
they're all gonna go to heaven, and the men are gonna get 27 virgins and all this stuff. Yeah,
I know.
I mean, the leaders, I wonder how many of their kids got the bombs on them.
Probably the same on here.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you for doing this,
Oh,
both me
Think
and
that's
for
it?
yeah,
We covered enough stuff?
yeah. I don't want you to go over the time limit.
No, that's all right.
But I just want to thank you. It's really nice of you to do this.
Yeah, that's all right.
So I'm just
Thanks for the help, but I don't want it to help.
yeah. No, it's a great project. So thank you very
What,
much.
is all had to get a veteran or
Yeah. In the class we did.
a World War II veteran had to be?
Either a veteran or a civilian.